A lot of the story of this day has been the aviation business. The airline suffering badly after 4 days of grounding, getting back to some semblance of normal this afternoon. NBC News correspondent Robert Hager is with us from Washington National. And Bob, what are all the angles of this tonight?
Well, Brian, I think there's no question the airline industry is going to take a hit here. I've heard figures up to $4 billion when you consider first just the money they lost this week in business that they were unable to take care of, revenue that was not coming in. Now they'll have to dig their way out with making up accommodations for passengers and all those kinds of things. And then I think they're going through some period where they'll take a further hit from people who are just afraid to fly. Congress has been talking about $2.5 billion in some kind of assistance to the airline industry, but it's not quite clear just what form that assistance would take. But at any rate, I'll bet that does not have a hard time getting through the hill in this atmosphere. Meanwhile, let's take a look at what was going on today.
The intense heat of the crash and fire that followed was just too much for the recorder, which otherwise might have been the most valuable find to date, might have provided an audio record of how the hijackers took the plane over and flew it on its suicidal mission. Meantime, flight data recorders from the Pentagon and Pennsylvania crashes may still help chart both planes' final movements. Did the one that hit the Pentagon first menace the Capitol or White House? And did the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania nosedive suddenly at the end, as though there was an ongoing struggle in the cockpit? Meantime, airlines managed to fly about 40% of flights today. The rest canceled. At ticket counters, huge lines like this one in St. Louis.
The line starts outside, goes to the on-ramp, comes back, goes inside, comes back outside. It zigzags like I've never seen before.
Some passengers frightened, like Brittany Smart.
I'm extremely upset. I'm scared to death of flying, especially now.
Others reassured by beefed-up security, like Deanna James.
I was queasy at first, but then I'm like, okay, at least I know they're taking the steps, and the steps they take are necessary.
In Atlanta, screeners hand-search bags. In Los Angeles, passengers have to pass through 2 security checks. New York's 3 airports finally reopened this morning, and permission to fly private planes is now being phased in too. But Boston's Logan Airport remains closed until tomorrow morning to give it more time to strengthen security. And the future status of Washington's Reagan National remains a question mark because of its uniquely sensitive flight path to the north, requiring takeoffs and landings that fly within 7 city blocks of the White House and directly alongside the Pentagon. Airline pilot Alec Pay.
And within less than a minute, you could hit the Pentagon, the White House, or the Capitol building quite easily.
So tonight, this once busy airport, southern end of the popular East Coast shuttles, a convenient favorite of traveling lawmakers, remains closed for the indefinite future.
Your personal belongings.
Now there's something interesting going on behind me. Even though this terminal here at Reagan National Airport is completely deserted because it's closed right now because of those concerns, they still play the tape recording that warns people not to leave unattended baggage around, things like that. Brian, I think one of the interesting questions to come out of this for the future, after the dust settles here, is how to deal with hijackings in the future, because hijackings were always thought of as kind of benign events. So somebody hijacked a plane, in the early days took it to Cuba, after that they took it various places, but the attitude was hands off, take the plane, don't hurt me, don't hurt the passengers. Then it went to some foreign capital or wherever, and they turned the hijackers free, and then the plane was allowed to fly back to the U.S. Now this, having a suicidal use of a hijacking, is a completely new concept, and I'm trying to think, how will they deal with that in the future? Because what can you do when a plane is flying in the air and your capacity to deal with it, other than shooting it down, is very, very limited.
Well, Bob, it's interesting. Tom Brokaw posed that question to Gordon Bethune, the CEO of Continental Airlines, earlier this afternoon. And he asked Bethune, should the cockpit be made more of a vault? Bethune said that is one idea that is under consideration by the airlines and by Boeing, the leading and dominant U.S. manufacturer. But that also raises a whole host of other problems.
Well, yeah, because the idea of the thin door has always been that if the plane is in an accident, which is much more likely than a hijacking statistically, then the pilots have to get out of the cockpit, and unless they can get out of a window, that's their only way of getting out. But by and large, I think if you took a vote of pilots, they would rather have that strong door. I think El Al, I've heard, has a very strong door, made of oak is the way I heard it. And they've got a little electrocution device underneath the door, on the floor there that they can turn on, so that if you go in the cockpit, the pilot can turn the juice on and shock somebody trying to get in.
El Al may increasingly be the model for airline security that all other carriers have to follow. So, Bob, a quick recap. Private aviation, private jets were allowed back up in the sky today. The nation's aviation is, at about 50% strength, but a lot of airlines that run on very thin profit margins are really, really struggling because not as many people are going to be anxious to fly, and they just simply can't get that many aircraft in the air yet.
Yeah, well, our biggest airline, United, has been in really bad financial shape through the economic slow times already. U.S. Air had claimed that they were near to filing bankruptcy when they wanted to merge with United. I think there's only Continental and Southwest, I believe it was the last I heard, that were turning a profit. And so the industry was already in bad shape, and this is going to deal them a huge blow here.
Robert Hager at Reagan National Airport in Washington. Bob, pleasure having you. Thank you.